Hello, I'm Celia Heritage, professional genealogist, author and family history tutor. And this is my YouTube channel, Heritage on Heritage, where I discuss family history matters. Now today I'd like to look at how to start your family history, because it's not as straightforward as it may appear if you watch various television programs. Where do you actually begin? Surprisingly enough, the best place to start is not on the internet, not online. It's far better to go back to basics and firstly assess what knowledge you already have and what other knowledge about the family there is within your family among your own relatives. In this way, you're likely to save yourself a lot of money, and you may well also gain a lot more information about individual ancestors and their personalities than you would otherwise do if you merely launch yourself into using online records. So where do we begin? Well, the best place to start is to start with yourself and your immediate family, and then to sit down and write down everything you know about those family members, and then to gradually work back if you have any information about your grandparents or possibly great grandparents, to get the facts down on paper first. Once you've got various facts down, you can see which facts are missing and what you need to find out. So when I say write down everything you know about your family, what do I mean? Well, let's have a look at an example. This is my theoretical friend. She's called Jane Clark, and she decided that she'd like to start tracing her own family history. So she sat down with a notebook. She's an old-fashioned girl. She doesn't like computers. And she decided she'd write down everything she knew about herself and her siblings to start with, and then her parents. So as you can see here, she's got her full name, her full date of birth, 11th of December 1971, Winchester. Then she's written down the dates of birth and full names for both her siblings, Kevin and Jill. And then she's moved on to her parents, who were John Edward Clark. He was born the 12th of April 1941 in Farnham, Surrey, and Claire Melissa Avery, Avery being the maiden name, of course. That's her mother. She was born the 13th of June 1945 in Paul in Dorset. And their date of marriage was the 16th of April 1969, again in Paul. Fairly basic stuff, what most of us will of course already know, but it's good to get it down there. And don't worry if you might think, oh, I need to draw a family tree or have a tree drawing program. That really doesn't matter at this stage. Then Jane goes on and she starts writing down details of her parents' siblings, so that's brothers and sisters. So she knew that her mum had just the one brother she thought, called Anthony, but she's not got a date of birth. She doesn't know his date of birth, and she doesn't even know whether he's older or younger than her mum. So she's put a query there. So any fact that you don't know or that is uncertain, put a question mark. Perhaps someone else in the family will be able to fill it in for you. Then she's moved on and she's got her dad's sibling there. He's got one brother, Michael Kenneth Clark, born, she thinks, about 1933, 1939, but she doesn't know where. Then she moves on to her grandparents. So she's done herself, her brothers and sisters, and also her uncles and aunts. That's her parents' siblings. So now she's moving on to her grandparents, starting with her mother's parents, and she knows that her maternal grandfather was Robert John Avery, and he was born probably about 1915, but she's not sure where. She does, however, remember him dying. She's got a memory of that, and she's able to remember quite clearly the date for her own personal reasons, and he died on the 12th of December 1986 in Maidstone in Kent. Then she writes down the details for her mum's mum. She knows she was called Jane, but she has no idea of her maiden name. She thinks she's probably born about 1915, but again, that's uncertain. And Jane died quite early on, and she has no personal memory of that grandmother, so she thinks she probably died about 1968, but she doesn't know where, and she doesn't know where they were married either. Then she needs to go on and do the same thing, repeat that procedure for her paternal grandparents. So this has highlighted the gaps. Now what you need to do next, and what Jane is going to do next, is to move on to asking other family members how many of these gaps they can fill in, and whether they have any further information about the family. And of course, it's important to target older family members first. If you have any elderly relatives, make sure you chat to them, because they won't be here forever. And if they're happy for you to do so, it's a good idea for you to actually record them. Many mobile phones have a voice recorder on, and that's perfectly adequate. Once that person has gone, all those precious memories will have died with them. And they, of course, will have many very precious anecdotes and family stories about relatives and ancestors. For example, what their personalities were like. And it's that sort of thing that won't be recorded in official records. So it's very important to do that. Now, when you've written down all the information that you yourself know and that you've gleaned from other family members, see if there's any conflicting evidence. And if there is, question it. And that conflicting evidence will need to be verified in documentary sources later on. Now, at the same time as interviewing your relatives, you should always ask them if there are any family papers that they hold within their home, or if they know other relatives have got, which might help you with your own research. So what sort of things am I talking about? What are family papers, or the family archive, for want of a better phrase? Well, you may well find that within the family you have original copies of birth, marriage and death certificates. And when you go on to do your family history research and start researching into new territory, you will find this is one of your main sources, and you'll need to buy birth, marriage and death certificates. Now, they actually cost £9.25 each, so if you've got any within the family archive, it's actually going to save you a lot of money and give you a good kickstart and help verify details that you may or not have been certain of when you wrote down your notes. You may also find there's other family records there, for example, or driving licenses, which may give dates of birth, some of the older driving licenses, or snippings from newspapers. This might be obituaries or details of exam passes or marriages, for example, which help flesh out your family history and give you sometimes vital facts about them. Also, service record papers. You can see here on the left there's some Royal Air Force book there, which will contain useful biographical details. Details from funeral papers will give dates of death and names of next of kin. And of course, sometimes you will find memorial cards. You can see one down the bottom there for my great-grandmother, Clara Beck. And it tells me she died, for example, on the 11th of February 1943, aged 82 years. And she was buried at Woodgrange Park Cemetery. And of course, then I can possibly go and find the gravestone, which will give me even more information about her. You will also find perhaps family photographs. Annoyingly, you'll probably find that these haven't been labelled, but if you're lucky, they may have been. If not, make sure, if possible, you sit down with an older relative and do label any faces they recognise. If you're going to label old photos on the back, make sure you either do so in pencil or use an acid-free pen, which you can order from various companies online. That will help preserve the photographs in good condition. Once you've done that, you've assessed and collated all the information that you have to start with. It's then time to move on and look at the various different family history sources you need to further your research. And we'll be doing that in another Heritage on Heritage YouTube video. Now, if you want to learn more about family history and how to trace your family tree properly and make sure you don't go up the wrong line, it's very easy to do. I do have my Celia Heritage Family History e-course, which is an in-depth 7-module family history course, and there's further details about that at www.chfh.co.uk/e-course, and the address is on the screen there for you now. Now, I am offering a £40 discount off the current price for all of you who have viewed this YouTube video, as long as you can tell me how old Clara Beck was when she died. And if you think you can do that and you'd like a discount on that e-course, you simply need to email me with the answer and saying you're interested, and I'll send you details of how to get your discounts. So find out more about me, what I do, and the Celia Heritage Family History e-course at www.chfh.co.uk/e-course.